Howdy ho, good neighbor. Today we're flying high above Oakland, California. The glass recycling plant. That's right, I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it a lot more than that. But I'll probably, I know for sure that I will quit saying that pretty soon, because look it, we are running out of stuff to film. That's right. The glass plant is only one building left stands on this day. And as you can see on this picture right here, they got water all over this place. It seems like the more water you put on it, the heavier it is, and maybe the faster it'll come down. I don't know. But in this room is the last of where people worked for tens of years. I can't say hundreds, but it was almost 100 years of existence for this glass plant, and now it's down to its last breath. Or should I say its last month, because it probably doesn't have another month. The way they work on this job, they have demolition in their name for a reason. Bay City Demolition. They really know how to tear it up good. So I've said it before, and I will say it again, that these videos are a lot better when there's some destruction going on. And today we are lucky enough to have a little destruction. But have you seen in my last couple videos on this side of the bay, I've been getting attacked by a seagull. Sammy the seagull, and that's probably what I'm looking for right there. Either that or a plane. So when you see abrupt moves like that, I have to look out for the bird. And believe it or not, you will see this drone jiggle once or twice. You see that abrupt move right there? That's because I was getting attacked. But I will show you one. I haven't seen it yet, but right there, maybe right there, you see my drone kind of jiggled. That was a bird strike. I got attacked by a bird. So you will say, well, how do you know that? See that bird right there at the bottom? Yes, there's proof and evidence. I got my drone home and I realized I had a cracked propeller. And I realized that bird, you could hear he was really screeching, and that's why I had to keep pulling away and using my zoom lens. But there was the proof that I have gotten struck by a bird. So I will add that in a future video of my propeller being all damaged. So there was that one shot. I will make a note of that. Maybe make a smaller video of a bird strike. So I'll remember to do that. Make a bird strike video. But yes, this DJI Air 3 drone is really the best drone for your money. And it is a lot of money. There's that bird again. You see what I'm saying? Sammy the seagull. It's not that bird. It's old Sammy the seagull. I've named him. So I better keep... So Sammy the seagull has really messed with a couple of my videos and almost taken down my drone. So on this particular day, it was hard to fly the drone because of two different factors. One factor was that darn Sammy the seagull. And you see those power lines on your left? Yeah, I can't fly too low because of those power lines. So there was some different obstacles I had to deal with on this day. But the seagull, Sammy the seagull, was the most destructive bird because when I'm about this low, that's prime time for him, I should say, because this is his altitude. But when my drone's way up in the sky, well, he doesn't like to fly that high. But I don't get these good close-up shots. So if you see my drone abruptly go up into the air, that's because I'm either getting struck by a bird or I see him in my vision. But there's a big old piece of metal he pulled out. I bet you when he pulls a big piece of metal out like that, he's got to be some kind of satisfaction. Yeah, look at the tugging power on that. So when you get a big chunk of metal like that, that's got to feel good, don't you think? I would think. Yeah, that's one of those tanks. So one of those tanks has been in there since the 1940s, 50s, I don't know, but that's seeing the light of day for the first time. So everything lives and everything dies, and you're seeing this plant die today. They'll definitely have to do something with this big hole in the ground, and they got to work very carefully around it. But as I back off of this site, this is how I sneak up on the action without the bird seeing me. And then there was another obstacle. So there was 3 obstacles. You have the power line, you have Sammy the seagull, and you have the mist. Yeah, you don't want to get your drone wet, and you definitely don't want to get your camera lens wet. Because if you get your camera lens wet, then you have no good footage. So there's that big tank. You see that big tank was round and solid, and now it's just collapsed and empty. What was in those tanks? I misspoke in one of my other videos saying there was 8 tanks. Well, actually there was 10 of those big tanks. So, good scrap metal or bad scrap metal? I don't know. That looks like it's pretty old, but what's old can be new again. You know that. You know all this material that you're looking at is going to be ground up and sold to another company to make it into something else. That's what's good about this earth, is you can always repurpose stuff. Well, there comes a big chunk come falling down. We always like to see those big chunks. And I'm always surprised the whole building doesn't come crumbling down, but no, it's all precise. Everything here is precision work. So, if you think you're just going to come around here and just pull the whole building down, think again. You got to do everything precisely. So this is where I was pulling back using my zoom lens, because there's that Sammy the seagull. You can see him flying around there. He doesn't like to fly this high, and I don't either. Believe it or not, I do not like to fly this high because I cannot get those good shots, and I'm a little vulnerable to airspace with other airplanes and stuff. Even though my drone tells me when there is an airplane or helicopter in my vicinity, which is very nice. Well, you can see all those guys, I wouldn't say waste gallons and gallons of water per day, because if you are keeping your neighbors from getting sick with toxic dust, then I guess you're not wasting water. Well, there's one of those pullback shots. I always like to do that and show you how big of a piece of property this is and what is left. And what is left is not a lot, is it? It's funny how they left all that mechanical stuff to your right. All that electrical and plumbing. That's probably some high hazardous stuff. So that's probably the last thing to be torn down. And plus they probably need that power to power everything. So that could be still utilized. I don't know. All I know is that this building was very, very hot at one time. And he just digs in there and picks out what he wants. But he doesn't take the main structure. You have to do it methodically. See how I use those big words? Methodically means to very purposely go in methodically. Are you impressed? I don't know. So methodically and miraculously and confidently and precisely and all the leaves out there, that's exactly how you tear down this building. I've said it before, I wonder if they get to a point like this and they start to slow down. But I don't think there is any slowing down in construction. Everything is on a schedule. There's that bird, Sammy the seagull. He just did a bird strike almost. So that's that abrupt pullback move. So that is Sammy the seagull saying, get out of my airspace. So guess what? I get out of his airspace and I just let him think he's the boss and chase me off. And he does. He's the boss. I'm not going to lie. If he wasn't the boss, I would stay there and fight him. But this drone costs too much money to be fighting seagulls. Matter of fact, I did play with him a little bit. But if you're going to play with a seagull and a drone, you could lose. So I was trying to get one of those good pullback shots like that with him chasing me, but I thought twice about losing a drone this day. But I'm not going to lie, every time I would come back over here, I would hear that stupid bird, and it was preventing me from getting a good shot, so I'm not going to talk anymore about Sammy the seagull making me pull away again. Well, I always like to give one of these little down shots to give you that good perspective of how high we are in the air and how much junk is on the ground. How dare I say junk? How much money is on the ground? That's right, that's not junk. That is U.S. currency, cold hard cash. It just needs to be sold to the highest bidder. That's what's going to happen. They're going to sell this metal to the highest bidder. And the lowest bidder might have a chance because the highest bidder sometimes is just too high. Well, I gave you a couple down shots there of what is left. And you can see how high I had to fly because of that bird. I thought I said I was going to stop talking about that bird. Okay. But it was frustrating to fly this far away from the action, especially when you see all that action going down. But he wasn't pulling anything out too big, so I really wasn't missing anything. And I think for some reason they do a little destruction and then they do a little picking through. They like pick the good stuff out, and then they pick the not good. So they make piles while they're tearing down a big building, and it makes sense. Makes their work a little easier. I always want to give this little pile of metal its due too, and I'm always amazed how big of scrap metal pile that is. But they have definitely kept this side of this job site completely wet. So whoever got the memo that we need more water on this job, well, they're doing it. Everything is soaked. Even the tractor driver is getting wet. So I guess I'm counting 1 or 2 more tanks left in that building. Maybe just 1. I do believe it's just 1 tank left. So out of 10 tanks, you will only see 1 left. So yeah, these guys do move quick. Now what was in those tanks? Each one of those tanks, it must have been like a big steam room. I bet you this was the heart and soul of that whole glass plant. And it makes sense that this would be the last spot they tore down was the heart of the glass plant. So if you worked at this glass plant, let me know if you believe that this building was the heart and all the power that powered this glass plant. It had to be. Now I wish I could have saved these old vents. These air vents are on swivels, and I don't know what I would have done with them. Put them in my front yard, made some art project out of them, but no, they're going right to the scrap yard along with the rest of this stuff. No art in this place, just money. Scrap metal money. That's what's left. Well, that defies me how they can reach that arm in there and know what to pull and what to not to pull. You know, you cannot mess with the big foundation. So I guess there's just a whole bunch of little loose stuff. I guess just like everything, if you've done this long enough, you know what to pull and you know what not to pull. That's why you don't probably have too many new guys on that rig. Experience only. You can almost see all the way through it. If I did not have all that water and didn't have the power lines and didn't have the birds, I would fly down there and get right down into that building. But thankfully, all those things are stopping me, because you really don't want to show off and lose a drone over a stupid video that no one's watching. But you would do it anyway if nobody was watching or not. It's just something that men in particularly do. We take risk for no reason. That's why women live longer, because they don't go exploring into old abandoned buildings. Not all, but most do not go exploring into abandoned buildings and get hurt. Well, it looks like I just put in a fresh battery just to end this video. That's right. We're going to end this video right now. But I wanted to get a fresh battery in this drone just to give you one A last look at what this glass plant looks like today. We're going to do a little loop-de-loop and call it done, because you will never see this building again. Not like this anyway. You might see it one more time, or you might not. They work so fast, you don't know when it'll be gone. But today, it's standing one last time before you. The heart and soul of the Oakland glass plant, producing power to the whole recyclable glass plant since the 1940s. Look at how hot that roof got. So we don't live in a hot climate area. The sun's not beating down on that roof. That's the heat from inside that building. Believe you me, all that steam and that's one of the worst. My hat goes off to the steam fitters out there. That is one of the worst jobs ever. You're always working around hot steam-filled pipe that if you touch it, it'll automatically burn you. So to the steam fitters out there, my hat goes off to you, because a lot of times they have to go into the boiler rooms and work while the boiler is still boiling. So they're called boiler rooms for a reason, because everything in there is boiling hot. And when you work in a boiling room, well, I've done it a few times. You are not cold. And even on cold days, it's kind of nice to go into the boiling room, but when you got to work in there for any amount of time, well, you just want to get out because it's so hot and you can barely breathe. So take my word, the steam fitters and boiler makers of this world, my hat's off to you hard. You are like pipe fitters, but better. And definitely a lot tougher to be working in those conditions. Well, there you go. One last look at the Oakland glass plant. Look at all the buildings that are gone. Each one of those was somebody working. Somebody had a job at each end of this plant at one time, but not anymore. Well, let me take that back. There's still one person for each part of this glass plant. They all just have a different job. One man has to keep it wet. The other man has to make the big metal smaller, and the other man has to tear down the building to keep the metal feeding into the furnace, as they say. So they all have a job to do, just like me, documenting this series. Not much left to document, I'll tell you that. But for those of you who have been watching this series, I always want to thank you. Oh, there's that bird. I'm not going to talk about you, Sammy. I want to just thank all you people that have been watching this Oakland glass plant series and listen to me ramble on about the same thing pretty much in every video all this time. I know it always gets a little old, but to tell you the truth, every time you watch these videos, you see something new, because those guys do not stop tearing it up. There's those birds trying to get me. Well, I'm just a little too fast for them today, but maybe one day they'll get me right about here over the water, so stay tuned for that. Well, it looks like the ship is still sunk. The people are still shopping. Well, as always, I want to thank you again for coming along with me on these Oakland glass plant last building standing adventures. You know the drill. Peace, love, and all that. Heebie jazz. Bye-bye, everybody.